Sumero-Akkadian researcher and author of 8 books regarding Sumerian translation, Anton Parks, believes that for hundreds of years, we have been translating these tablets wrong.
Gary Zeitling provided me with these 10 tablets found at Sippar to check symbols one by one. I noticed one translation saying one thing, and the other saying sometimes the complete opposite. The true translations did not comply. I persistently did research on Hebrew, but nothing was coming out of it. And then completely by chance, I came across a Sumero-Akkadian lexicon, and this is when I could finally, slowly start to translate the tablets.
What Anton Parks began to translate was a completely different version of the Garden of Eden than we've heard before. The word's been mistranslated.
In biblical text, we constantly read about this idea of heaven or paradise. This comes from the Greek paradisios, and this literally means enclosure for wild animals, not paradise, a term that was later transcribed as garden during the Hellenistic era. If we go back to the original translation in the Sumerian tablets, it says, "The men who serve the gods work for them in the garden and are treated like animals." It is a very clear and recurrent theme. They are slaves who serve the divine community. In Hebraic text, we understand that the humans seem happy in this so-called paradise, which is, in fact, more like a concentration camp, according to Sumerian texts.
These 10 tablets, according to Anton Parks, tell the Sumerian version of how the Garden of Eden was created.
Lorsque les dieux sumériens sont arrivés sur Terre, se sont établis sur cette...
From my translations, I discovered when the Sumerian gods arrived on Earth, they settled on this mountain in order to create a colony.
The Epic of Atrahasis and others, they talk about that the earth was actually administered by a conference of gods or a group of gods in an assembly. It wasn't just one god. Yeah, they would have like their equivalent of the prime minister or the CEO who would be in charge of this group. Enlil, Enki, that were the primary members of this congress there.
Well, Enki and Enlil in the Sumerian system are an interesting pair. Enlil is this rather sort of overarching, domineering, angry, dangerous entity. And he doesn't really care about humanity. Humanity are not very important to him. But then we have Enki, the trickster, and the god of wisdom, actually. And he does care about humanity. And he intervenes on the human level.
They are called gods, but they were humanoid beings of a rather reptilian type. The texts of Eden that I translated depict clearly and quite frequently the reptilian features of the gods. I personally estimate that the gods arrived approximately 300,000 years ago. And this derives from the fact that Homo sapiens arrived shortly after. I say this because throughout the text, genetics and the transformation of the human being are recurrent themes. The 2 particles that compose the word Eden are E, which means home, and Din, or Tin, which is life. But indeed, they are not alone. Humans are already on Earth. Who are these human beings? What can be noted in the Sumerian tablets, when they clearly speak of creating workers to serve the Anunnaz, the main geneticist is always Enki. He works with the genome that is on the planet to create a new kind of human. He is usually helped by priestesses that we often call the Nintis, who are the priestesses of life. They know how to clone with him. He can change the human genomes according to what Enlil asks of him, which would be left-brained, well-disciplined humans.
When we look at the Sumerian tradition, it is a group of beings rather than one being that creates humankind. So it is not a single creator, but a group of intelligent, technologically advanced beings. Where the Sumerian creation varies from the Christian traditions, for example, and some of the native traditions, is in the Sumerian traditions, humankind began with the sacrifice of the life of an advanced being, of a god from Sumeria, so that that god's DNA, or the blood is what the texts say, could be mixed with the elements of the earth to create the first viable human. Human chromosome number 2 is the second largest chromosome in the human body. It forms about 8% of DNA in every cell. And what makes it such a mystery is that it appears to be the result of an ancient fusion of pre-existing chromosomes from primates that have been fused in a very precise way, and the fusion site has been modified and stabilized. This has happened in a way that cannot be explained by evolution as we know it today. Now, why is this important? Human chromosome number 2 contains the genes that largely set us apart from all other forms of life.
It is said that Enki secretly modifies the human genes by group or by location and imbues some humans with a knowledge that is different, to the point where the other gods turn against him. His experiment will change the human genes to enlighten mankind. And throughout this cloning process that the Anunnaki and Enlil are overlooking, I think that some humans filter through all of this and start becoming independent.
Anton Parks points out that this is something that the gods did not expect from these new humans that keeps appearing in the ancient texts, and that is the human ability to be more than just slaves. This forms a division of the gods, a division that causes a war that has set the tone for humanity today.
An interesting and very important name in the biblical text and the Sumerian text is the word Adam from the Garden of Eden. Extensive tests have been conducted to see where this word came from, consistently looking for Hebrew roots, but it is a Sumerian word which means animals. Again, we understand that human beings were considered to be animals by the Sumerian gods, and this is where lies the conflict between two gods, Enki and Enlil. Enki wants to treat them like the other gods.
These two Sumerian gods have a conflict over the use of humans, and it is to be the root of the biblical story of the serpent in the garden. As the story unravels, the riddle starts with the origin of the word Satan, or Satan in English.
Satam in Sumerian means the administrator. For years, everybody has been looking to find where this word came from. Books revolve around this issue. It is a Sumerian term. I don't understand how nobody saw it. It is very clear. We find it in ancient lexicons. Enlil is often referred to as the Great Satam, the Master Administrator. In the Sumerian text, Enlil systematically asked Enki to go negotiate and talk with humans. He is always the one to deal with them. Remember, he is a humanoid with reptilian features. And in Sumerian tablets, he is always, or very often, called the serpent, just like in the Bible. He is the only one that the humans are going to see. And when they see him, they see a serpent-like humanoid. I reckon this is why he is called the serpent in the garden. He is a friend of the humans.
In the biblical text, the serpent tempts Eve with an apple from the forbidden tree of knowledge. Yahweh, or God, from the Bible, forbids the humans in the garden to partake from this tree. According to Parks, the Sumerian version of this story translates Yahweh, or the biblical God, into the great Satam, which according to Sumerian text is Enlil, and the serpent in the garden as Enki, who has become a friend of the humans.
Serpent in Sumerian text, just like in the Bible, comes to the woman. Women are the future of mankind. They raise their children, they transmit their knowledge to their children. Enki is going to tell the women the secret of tool making. This is expressed as niche in Sumerian, which means tree. This means for the first time mankind could have two sides of the tool. The side is fundamentally good so that they can take care of themselves, and the tool that is fundamentally bad, which they could use to defend themselves. One could wonder why Enki insists on getting this particular secret through to the humans. Well, he has the desire to set them free. There's a spectacular scene where humans take up arms and go up the mountain of the gods to revolt, and even maybe try to kill all the gods. What happens is an abomination. They put back on track the few survivors. Indeed, from what we can grasp from his personality, Enki was all about peace and wouldn't use tools in order to kill, as he was perfectly aware of what would happen. So this scene of humans rebelling against the gods is quite special, and it cannot be found anywhere in the Bible.
Could the Sumerian problem have been a way for Yahweh to install his own rules so the humans would not revolt again? Is this why we don't find any of these translations anywhere else, and why we have the establishment and religious beliefs surrounding our existence today?
The book of Genesis was really written between 200 and 300 BC. It is important to know that the Bible, where we find the most complete book of Genesis, is dated from 400 AC, which brings us to this idea, that when scholars are compiling the book of Genesis, they must have made a choice. A deliberate choice to keep or take out some elements in order to make the Bible as we know it today.
Is it possible that modern-day religion and government structure have been mistranslating our human past to keep us under the control of Enlil or Yahweh, other ancient texts that tell a similar story?
What's dynamite in the Gnostic system is that the Gnostics believe that we have been hoodwinked, that entity that we have been taught to call God and worship is no such thing.
The Nag Hammadi, the Gnostic version of the Garden of Eden.
I've been trying to warn you for decades, that it all began with religion, and the most basic assumptions we are taught to make even before we can really think rationally at all. The God of the Bible is the real adversary of humanity. The idea occurred to me even as a teenager. Now we have the proof. The cult of Judah are the cult of Enlil. David Icke is closer to the truth than Brendan O'Connell, who imagines he has woken up from his trance/dream, but like most people, has just dreamed he is awake, and is simply operating in a slightly more advanced bubble/dream/trance. Trunit Noor.